There are 4 more tools and techniques I want to cover in Adobe Illustrator: the Reflect tool, Envelope Distort, Freeform Gradient, and Gradient Mesh. So let's take a look at the Reflect tool. Now this is good whenever you have to do something that is symmetrical, when you're creating a face or any kind of an object, a butterfly, a heart, that is symmetrical on both sides. All you have to do is create one side and then reflect. You have a perfectly symmetrical object. First of all, I'm going to drag out a guide, and then I'm going to take my pen tool and I will create half of a heart shape. If you've ever tried to draw a heart by hand and get it perfectly symmetrical on both sides, it's a little tricky to do. And maybe I can finesse this a little bit. Now with this selected, with all of the points selected, so you'd use the selection tool, make sure everything is selected, and then you can go to the Reflect tool. It's in the same category with the Rotate tool, so we want to do the Reflect tool, and similar to the Rotate tool, you have to establish a point of reference around which this will reflect. So I'm going to Option click right on this guide. This will be a vertical. You can see here what it's going to look like. I want this to be a vertical reflect, and I've got preview checked, so it's going to show me what it's going to look like. Then press copy, and it will make a duplicate of it. You can then take your direct select arrow, select the endpoints, Command J for join, and now we have a single heart object that's perfectly symmetrical on both sides. Same thing goes if you were drawing something, a little bit more complicated, like a, I don't know, butterfly wing sort of. Then I will select my whole path, select my Reflect tool, hold down the Option key, and copy. Envelope Distort is another very useful command. It can be a lot of fun to play with. Let's say you wanted to create a curvy shape similar to this. This again would not be that easy to draw freeform, but with Envelope Distort, it's a piece of cake. Let's start by choosing our rectangle tool, and I will just draw a rectangle and sample this red. I'm going to drag down a guide, and then I'm going to go to Object, Envelope Distort, Make with Mesh. And I'm going to choose the default of 4 rows and 4 columns and say OK. And then you get something that looks like this. Now change to the direct select arrow, your white arrow, deselect, and then select just this row here. And you can hold down the Shift key and move it up. And then this row here, and move it up. And there you go. A perfect curvy shape with parallel lines. Now let's say we wanted to reflect this. You could take your reflection tool and Option click. I'll give it a little bit of space here. In this case we want to do horizontal. There you can see the preview. Click copy. So now we've got perfectly reflected shape. All right, let's try another one. This time I'm going to use a symbol to begin with. So I've gone in and I've opened up my retro and chose the lips, and that has been added to my symbols panel. Now I'm just going to drag this out to make one instance of the lips. I'm going to expand. Right now this is just a reference to an image that is in my symbols library. But to make it an actual object, I need to go to Object, Expand. I will expand the object and the fill. Say OK. So now it's all vector shapes. I want to take the outside, the main shape, and copy it and paste it. Move it over here. And then I'm going to merge it together into a single shape using Pathfinder. And I get something like that. I do have a little line in here I want to get rid of, so I'm just going to select that one and delete it. Join those two. I'm going to take my type tool and type KISS. I will rotate it a little bit so that it's kind of at the same angle as my lips. The plan is to take Kiss and have it fit inside these lips and then put it over the top of the other lips. I'm going to change the color of this to a pink and then select. Now this one has to be, I'm going to put this inside of here, so this one has to be uppermost. So you have to bring it to the front, make sure it's in the front. Then we can select both of these and again go to Envelope Distort, but choose Make with Top Object. And then it's going to fit it into that top object, in this case the lip shape. Then I'll move it over to my lips here. Now we could distort this additionally to make it fit better by coming in again to Envelope Distort, choose Reset with Mesh. In this case I want to have at least 4, so I'll do the 4 and 4, see what it looks like. Say OK. Now I can take my direct select arrow and I can go in on any of those where the points are and move them around. And then I can make this fit in here even better. Something like that. We have another feature in Envelope Distort. Let me select this type. I can close up my symbol, select this type, go back into Envelope Distort, Make with Warp. And this tool just gives you a number of different kind of presets you can play around with. You can adjust these parameters here. It doesn't give you as much control as the mesh, but sometimes it's a lot faster and it just gives you what you need. If you are working in Essentials Classics, this distort feature will be available right up in here. So Envelope Distort is a fun tool to play around with, and it's another one of those real time-saving tools that can make your life a lot easier when working in Adobe Illustrator. Freeform gradient is a great way to add multiple gradients to a single object. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to select this abstract shape I just created, and I'm going to go open up my gradient panel, and I'll apply just a standard gradient. Now if I choose third option here, this is the Freeform gradient, I'm going to get something like this. Now it's using the current fill color from my toolbox, but I can click on these and give it any color I want, and I can add them wherever I want. So let's say I go into kind of an orange over here, maybe down here I'll go into some purple. So I can move these around. I can add more of them. This would be very good also, I think, for those of you who are in transportation design, because it would allow you to create reflections very easily. It'd also be great for rendering flowers, for example. Anything where you'd like some very subtle changes in gradient and you want to have more control over the gradient beyond just simply a linear gradient or a radial gradient. There's another way that you can create complex gradients and the illusion of reflections, and that's using the gradient mesh tool. So first I'm going to use my pen tool to create a path around this fender and fill it with a medium value orange. So let me just do that very quickly. I want to do as few points as possible on this part of it. And we can create the mesh itself two ways, either with the gradient mesh tool, and that allows you to manually create rows and columns, or you can go up to Object, Create Gradient Mesh, and this will automatically generate rows and columns based on the numbers you enter here. I'll go with 4 and 4 and say OK. Ideally, the grid would follow the contours of the car. Sometimes it comes out better than others. This one isn't too bad, but I'm still going to come in here, click on individual points, move them around to try and get this so it is more accurate to the shape of the car. This could take a little bit of time to finesse it and really get it right, but it's worth taking the time because it's going to make it much more effective when you start using the gradients. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now all you do is with the direct select arrow, you can select points. So I'm going to select, hold down my shift key and select points all down this row. And then with my eyedropper, hit I for eyedropper, I'll select this color. And sometimes if you get them very close, it will create a more realistic gradient. So I'm just going to come in here now, select some of these. Eyedropper, I'll select that color. And get one of the darker colors in here. So I'm not following this very precisely, but I think you'll get the idea. And so forth. So again, you do need to spend a little time. It takes a little bit of practice. Looks like we have a little bit of a dent here, so you could come in here and grab the grid and correct that. Get rid of the dent. And I have seen some very photorealistic looking illustrations created this way. And of course you could use a combination of the gradient mesh and the Freeform gradient tool.